All right, welcome to this presentation about the balance system. Very excited to have you here and for you to come with me on this journey as we learn about how the brain creates balance and why you should want to improve it. Before we get into it, let me ask you a couple questions. Do you have persistent tight areas that no matter how much you roll out, no matter how much you stretch, they always wind up tightening up again within a short matter of time? I know I used to have a tight muscle right here on my inner thigh that would always get tight, was always tight by the end of the day, no matter what I did. I was always rolling it out. And a big part of the issue was balance and the fact that my equilibrium was off. And we're going to get into that. So if you have tight areas that you deal with, then this presentation is for you. Do you have muscles that refuse to engage? No matter what exercises you do in the gym, it's really hard to get them to fire. And even if you do manage to get them to engage after a lot of work or activation, before long, you're out about in life and you notice, man, this muscle is, again, not doing anything. It's not staying engaged, not helping me in my daily life. Well, this presentation is for you. Do you wish you stood with better posture and moved more gracefully? Do you feel like despite doing all the internet's favorite stretches and exercises for posture, you still catch yourself slouching, standing with a twist, etc.? Then who do you need to talk to? This lady, because she's clearly figured something out. Look at this smug grin she has from bad posture to good posture, totally unaffected emotionally. This lady's a warrior. Okay, moving on. Benefits of improving balance, the benefits that you can receive from what we're going to be talking about today. Improving balance can have a profound effect on one's life. Common results are vastly improved muscle tone, better movement skill, enhanced postural tone and alignment, decreased daily muscle tension in those tight areas, better ability to tolerate stress, improvements in strength, speed, and mobility, breakthroughs in sports performance, plus more. Some of these improvements will be noticeable from your very first training session. Others will take a little more time. This is really profound stuff we're talking about. And as we go through it, you're going to ask yourself, why is this not discussed in traditional training? And you will see it is one of the several key foundational things that traditional training just leaves out. And it's why so many people are not optimizing their movement. So let's start with this basic question. How does the brain achieve balance during movement? To understand that, we need to understand a concept called triangulation, and we can use something we're all familiar with to understand this concept, which is the GPS in your phone. So for you to go from, you're in a new city, you want to go to your friend's house, you don't know where you're going, and you're not going to pull out a map. You pull out your phone, and all you do is type in their address, and voila, your phone's telling you how to get there. How does it do that? It does that through a process called triangulation. What this means is that for your phone to give you accurate instructions, it needs to connect to at least 3 satellites. As it gets data from 3 different satellites in 3 different areas that each see your body from a different, or your car, your location from a different angle, a different vantage point, it's going to send information to your phone. Your phone will then compare and integrate that information into one singular output, which is your location in relationship to where you want to go. And from there, it can give you directions. If signal quality from any of those satellites is poor or not present, the entire calculation will get thrown off and will reduce the output quality you receive, will reduce the information. And so your GPS will have to say either recalibrating, or it'll do that thing where it's like, go this way, no, go this way, no, go this way. Or we'll just say, disconnected, whatever. But you're not going to be getting those clear instructions, right? And what does this do? This forces you to slow down. You might get stressed. You're not able to focus fully on what you're doing, which is driving. You're having to figure out, where do I go? And that's, you're going to get tense and distracted. And this is exactly what happens in the body when our balance systems are thrown off. So effortless, graceful, efficient movement relies on our body and our brain, specifically our brain, being able to triangulate 3 different satellites systems in an efficient way and being able to integrate that information from all those 3 systems. What are those systems? The visual system, the vestibular system, which is our balance system, and the proprioceptive system. We're going to talk about each of these briefly and then get practical with it. So, looking at these 3 systems piece by piece, let's start with vision, which is the lazy brain's favorite information source. And this is because sight is the most powerful source. Sight helps us maintain our stability by referencing the vertical and sometimes horizontal lines in our surroundings. So you're out and about, you're walking from your car to the office. Relying on just your eyes alone, you would be fine staying upright. You could just look at the vertical lines on the street poles, on the buildings, and the moment your head starts or your body starts tilting too far off the axis, your eyes will notice that change in alignment with the vertical lines that are stable, and your brain will create those corrections. It is the richest, most powerful source of information and the most vital to navigating space in real time. If you had to pick one system to navigate space, you would want to pick the eyes. It's going to give you the richest and most abundant amount of data to be able to make decisions about where you are in alignment to gravity and how to navigate the environment around you. However, because it's so powerful and it is sufficient on its own to get from A to B, it's not optimal, but it is enough on its own. The brain can become so over-reliant on vision that it begins to pay less and less attention to the vestibular system and the proprioceptive system. You know, if we sit a lot, if we work at a computer, if our job is not to be an athlete and constantly staying active and doing different things that challenge our balance, challenge our proprioceptive system, then the brain's going to say, look, for the last 5 years, 20 years, I've only really had to rely on my visual system. Guess what? I've gotten to a point where I pretty much only rely on my visual system. And the issue with this is that it's the vestibular system, especially, that makes things more efficient. It adds that subtle calibration that when you're missing it, yeah, you can still walk through space, you can still navigate, but you're not nearly as efficient. Let's move on. To think of the vestibular system, think of what you would look at in the cockpit of an airplane, which you can see right here. This is the kind of information your vestibular system tells you. It tells you acceleration through space. It identifies your orientation with respect to gravity. So close your eyes, tilt your head to the left. Part of the reason you know your head is now tilted to the left is the proprioceptive system, which is telling you your neck is bending, but the vestibular system on its own can tell you that your head is tilted to the left. That's the vestibular system. Your eyes are closed, but you still know your head is tilted. Vestibular system determines direction and speed of movement. Let's say you're moving in a car, right? You're not moving, you're just sitting down and your eyes are closed, but the driver makes a right turn. You will be able to register that to some degree just by the vestibular system, because that's the kind of information it captures as well. It makes automatic adjustments to maintain posture and stability. It does this through the vestibulospinal reflex. This is going to be really important for posture, for dynamic alignment. Your vestibular system has direct neural feedback loops with the spine muscles and the muscles that hold you up in upright posture. So as you train and stimulate your vestibular organ, your vestibular system, you are upregulating a very, very old and primal feedback loop of activation for the back muscles. And so what you'll find is, for example, we do a lot of drills that challenge the vestibular system, and doing one of those drills before a set of deadlifts or back squats, you will be stronger in those deadlifts or back squats because you've activated and upregulated activity in that area. So This again is the system that's very, very involved in that fine-tuning, graceful adjustments to your movement. The eyes allow you to make like gross movement patterns, but it's the vestibular system that adds that next layer of efficiency. Moving on. The proprioceptive system. Think of this system as your brain's 3D representation of your body in the brain. Because if you really think about it, how does the brain know where your body is in space or what position you are in space? It does. Your brain is not hooked up to a camera outside yourself looking at your body that's telling your brain this is where your body is. Like, how do you know where your body is in space? Well, it's the proprioceptive system. These maps are filled out by nerve endings in all the joints, muscles, and fascia or connective tissue that receive information from the outside world or inside world and send that information to the brain, giving it information regarding pressure, stretch, heat, sharp touch, soft touch, etc. Okay, so I'm assuming you're sitting down right now. How are you able to tell, especially if you close your eyes, you'll be able to tune in even more. How are you able to tell that your knees are bent at this moment? There are nerve endings in the knee joint, all throughout the knee joint, that are measuring the level of compression or stretch on different ligaments in the knee. There's stretch receptors in the quad muscle that are now lengthened because your knee is bent. All of this data is being sent from all the tissues in the knee and around the knee up to the brain, letting your brain know your knee is bent at this angle. Now, let's say you had a really bad skiing injury and you tore your ACL. It was a horrible injury and you didn't get great rehab. And this all happened 5 years ago. You may not have a nearly as accurate an idea of how bent your knee is right now on that side because of that injury. And that's a big problem for the proprioceptive system. And how to address that can be covered in another video, but I just want you to understand this very also important system and how it relates to balance. As we're moving through space, if we have a well-tuned proprioceptive system, that also adds that third layer of fine-tuning and fidelity and higher pixelation and quality to our movement. Think about if you're walking through a field at night, you're going to your friend's house, you're 14, going through the woods, whatever, it's really dark, you can't see. You're going to be relying a lot more on your vestibular system, but also as you are kind of ducking under brushes, you see this hill you're about to start climbing, you're going to be relying a lot on your proprioceptive system to know how steep is this hill, how much am I going to have to bend. All of these systems, depending on your environment at the time, will be used more or less depending on the situation, but we need to have access to all of them. Moving on. Let's get practical, right? How do we train the balance systems? How do we force the brain, teach the brain to rely less on the visual system? Well, to do that in our programming, we used closed eyes drills. These drills force the brain to rely on the vestibular and proprioceptive systems, upregulating them as a means of survival. If your brain has to pick between using those systems or starting to try to remember how to start using them again, paying more attention to them, or falling over, it's going to do everything it can to not fall over. That's its number one goal, is safety. What happens is over time, by doing these drills, by forcing your brain, hey, you have no choice, use these systems, it will neurologically re-weight these systems. It will, over given enough practice, the brain will come to a point where it's like, okay, clear, like I need to maintain an awareness of these systems. I need to maintain communication with these systems at a high level because it's clearly very important to my survival. That's called reweighting. It will reweight these information sources so that even in daily life with the eyes open, your brain is now still accessing and utilizing these other systems to a higher level so that you can move through space with way more efficiency and grace. Incredible. What does this look like? Well, this looks like these examples here. Let's walk through it. So these are all taken from the EverFit programming. Let's take a look. This first one here, pivot reach. So my eyes are closed, as they will be in all of these, and I am twisting and reaching. So the benefit here, right, and this is pretty basic, but I'm learning to shift my center of gravity over my right leg slightly.
The vestibular system will track my acceleration through space, moving back and forth.
As I reach, my eyes are closed, right? So I'm going to be able to tune in way more. Am I reaching? Am I getting good engagement in my core as I reach? Am I getting good rotational engagement in the obliques, the hips? How far can I reach without offsetting my center of gravity? Okay, it's a basic movement to do, but with the eyes closed, and if you add speed, all of a sudden you're having to rely a lot more on those other systems. Let's look at stepping. One of the best things you can do is practice walking, stepping in an area where you have the space or you're not going to trip, to take steps forward and back. Walk with your eyes closed and find out for the first time usually how you're really walking. It's only when your eyes are closed and you actually start breaking those steps that you realize how much you rely on your visual system, and without the visual system, how you will grossly over exaggerate certain motions. And you'll notice over time with practice how you can tighten that up and get way more. You'll experience what efficiency is firsthand, because you'll be walking and you'll just stay in your lane and you don't overreach in any way. And that is the value of the vestibular system that you'll experience firsthand. So they're stepping. This is Romberg's with bicep curl and press. I put this one in here because it shows you a very easy way to take any standard exercise you do in the gym, right? Everyone does a bicep curl. Everyone does shoulder presses. By just narrowing your base of support, you will force your balance systems to maintain balance from the trunk stabilizers, which is very important. A lot of people with low back pain, they don't stabilize with the trunk well. They over rely on the ankles or the hips. And so just narrowing your base of support can be very useful. There's more to cover here. Let's talk a little bit about tips and a little bit about variables. Are you more of a tips guy or a variables girl? Let's see. Ditch your sneakers, especially for balance training. I recommend for life, but ditch your sneakers, especially the ones with the raised heel, the narrow toe box, the squishy support. The issue is they blur sensations and reduce quality of proprioceptive information coming from the feet and ankles, which creates ripple effects up throughout the entire chain. A quick story here. My girlfriend, when we first started dating, would always wear these sneakers like this. I convinced her to get out of them. She, moved over to minimalist shoe wear. And her first response to me within the first 2 weeks was, I'm amazed at how much more I feel my glutes and hamstrings. We were on a hike when she said this. I feel my glutes and hamstrings so much more in this shoe wear than I did when I used to wear my sneakers. I'm feeling my glutes and hamstrings naturally just walking, when I used to just feel my quads. And that's because because of both of these first two bullet points, because the other side of the coin of blurring sensations and reducing proprioceptive information is it's going to impede your brain's ability to adequately recruit the right muscles in the right ways around the ankles and feet, and therefore also up the rest of the kinetic chain. So my recommendation is, especially when doing balance training in the closed eyes drills and really working out in general, wear barefoot, train barefoot, or wear minimalistic flat shoe wear whenever possible. And flat just means your heel is not raised up. Just type in minimalistic shoe wear if you need an idea of what that looks like. This is the next tip, and something to keep in mind is, do you need to train looseness or tightness? So they've done studies on balance, and people fall into two camps when it comes to balance strategies, when it comes to the way their brain tries to create balance or stability. I call them limp noodles or tightwads. The scientific literature calls them loose strategies or tight control strategies. One group of people are very loose in their approach to balance. So if they lose their balance, they'll be very loosey-goosey, and they'll rely on the stretch receptors in their ligaments. And they rely a lot more on their ligaments to kind of catch them, and then slowly they come back to the midline. But they're very loosey-goosey, and they need to work on just like maintaining a little bit more rigidity in balance training and in motion. So if they were to do that pivot reach, they'd be like reaching and then losing and then like they'll be real bendy in their motion. They need to be more rigid. The other end of the spectrum, tight control strategy, tight wads, their response is the moment they start to lose balance or the moment the brain starts trying to triangulate their movement, which is happening all the time, the moment a miscalculation comes up or a threat signal comes up, they're going to just tighten everything in their spine, especially around the erectors, the trunk. They'll just really stiffen and tighten, and it's a bit overemphasized. It's a bit much, and they need to learn to find that healthy level of relaxation where they can be a little bit more like water. And when they're doing, let's say, some of these closed eyes drills, how can I be a little bit more, what is the right level of relaxation so I can get enough movement without becoming too bendy? So just focus on that in these drills and check in with yourself. Am I bending and falling all over the place? Or do I notice I'm tensing and stiffening, right? Really tune into your body, because there's a Goldilocks middle where you have enough tension, enough stability, and enough pliability. You watching this right now, you're gonna need to focus probably on more on one than the other. So just take a notice of that and ask yourself, do I need more rigidity or looseness as I'm doing these motions? Okay. Practice movements in different stances. Feel free to get creative. So in a lot of these closed eyes drills and the rest of the programming and the rest of life, I want you to just keep in mind that when you change the positioning of your feet, how close your feet are together, the direction the feet are pointing, is one foot pointing this way, the other foot pointing that way. All of that is going to be variety to the brain, variety to your balance system, and will make the motion harder or easier. So if you recall back to that very first exercise I showed you where you're just pivoting and reaching, if your feet are really wide, that's a wider base of support. That's going to be easier than if your feet were right next to each other, right? When I showed you the tightrope or the Romberg position where you're basically one foot's in front of the other, that's a very narrow base of support. It's gonna be a lot harder to stabilize. So let's look at these here. So here your feet are really wide and turned out. That's a big base of support. Whereas here, if you look right below it, your feet are now much closer together. That's going to make it a little bit harder. We do something called a 1.5 stance, and that just means one foot's totally on the ground. The other foot, only the ball of the foot is on the ground and the heel is raised. It's kind of a halfway point between a neutral stance with both feet on the ground and a tightrope Romberg stance. It just makes it's kind of in between those in terms of difficulty. But if the leg is turned out versus turned in, that's going to change things. It's going to change things biomechanically. It's going to change stressors to your brain from a balance standpoint. So just get creative with your balance, and you'll notice a lot of our drills have you in very different positions with the feet and how they're oriented to each other. Lastly is practicing with different head positions. If you're doing drills with your eyes closed and you're facing forward, turning your head to the left will all of a sudden make it more challenging, or to the right, or up and down. So as you're doing motions, don't be afraid to incorporate head movements to add challenge. Practice with different head positions when doing balance work. Explore this with any exercise in our programming, especially closing the eyes.
A quick note here, turning the head with eyes open or closed doesn't matter. Turning the head will also stimulate different parts of the vestibular system, which is why it can help you access more muscles and more brain activation.
With all that said, thank you for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this presentation. That is a wrap. What kind of wrap? Let's see. It's got some salami, some onions, some cheese. Hopefully it's the kind of wrap you like. I want to leave you with a video that can really show you what's available to you if you work on your balance, right? You can also, what I want you to understand is you too can be a guy wearing a unicolor suit invited by someone, but probably by a close friend, to do some random dancing on what seems to be a pool heater here. This can be you. And look at this, not falling over, doing some funky thing, probably leaving here to go have some kombucha or something. A cool guy, needless to say. You can be a cool guy or girl dancing on random pool heaters and not falling off is the point, right? He's not falling off. So I hope that's motivation for you. Who is this guy, by the way? Constantly popping up in people's presentations unannounced. Anyways, with all said and done, good luck. May your balance improve day by day.